Hi, thanks for joining us on Create Better Health. Today we're going to be making bread, but it's not just any bread. It's called bread in a bag. So all you need are your hands and a bag. And I'm going to go ahead and show you the ingredient list really quick so that you can go grab your mom or dad or your adult helper and you guys can go get all of the ingredients and the equipment that you need. All right, so what we'll need to do to make our bread, and this goes really for any bread recipe, is we're going to use something called yeast. And I'll let you take a little bit. What this is actually a living organism. So we're going to treat this kind of like it's our pet. And what we're going to do is when you get a new pet, like a puppy, let's say, is you want to give it a good place to sleep. So I'm adding 1 cup of white flour, or all-purpose flour, and then I'm adding the other cup of flour, wheat flour. Remember how we talked about in our lesson part about having half of our grains be whole grains? So we're going to give this yeast a nice place to sleep. And it's not awake yet, it's kind of dormant or sleeping still. And when we wake up our pet, we want to make sure that it has enough food. And so sugar, when we add sugar to dough or to yeast, that helps make its food, or be its food. The next thing we're going to add is salt. And salt does 2 things. It gives the bread flavor, but it also makes it so that the yeast, or our puppy, doesn't go out of control. So it's kind of like obedience school. It makes it so that when it rises, it doesn't go too crazy. This is powdered milk, and what that does is it gives our bread, it's kind of just a nice rich flavor. Now we've added all of the dry ingredients. You just want to squeeze out some of that excess air. Make sure it's nice and secure. And you just want to make sure that there's no lumps of any sort, that it's all really nice and mixed up well together. Now this is where the fun part begins. This is where the cooking magic starts. We're going to wake up that little puppy in there. Remember I told you it was still sleeping? And the way we do that is we add 1 cup of really, really warm water. If you add water that's too hot, it will burn the yeast and it will kill it. If it's not hot enough, it won't wake it up all the way. So 1 really good way, and then I'm adding 3 tablespoons of oil. 1 really good way to see if the water's warm enough is to run your hand right here, run the inside of your wrist under the water. And if it feels like it would be a nice good bath or shower to take at that temperature, that's a good idea of how warm you want your water to be. So now we're just going to mix it up in a bag. Pretty easy. And again, the main thing you want to do here is just make sure that all of the dry parts get a little bit moistened with that oil and water. There's a couple little dry spots in there that we're going to try to get to. Make sure you check your corners. Those can be kind of difficult to get to. Now when I hold up the dough is still sticking to the side of the bag. So what we need to do is add a little bit more flour. See how when I open it up, it's still totally sticking to the side of the bag. We're going to add a little bit more flour in here. We're going to just lightly knead it. And when we say knead, we're not talking about like I need chocolate or I need a vacation. We're talking about kneading. And kneading is when you kind of roll the dough around with your hands. And what that does is it helps develop gluten in our bread so that the dough becomes nice and elastic. When we add yeast with water and put it in a nice warm environment, that yeast will let off a gas that creates little air pockets. And then because the dough is nice and elastic, it will create a little bubble around that air pocket, and that's what gives us those little bubbles in our bread when we're eating bread or dough. Okay. Now you want to add enough flour to where this becomes kind of a little clump. And the trick with flour is you can always add more flour, but you can't take it out. So as you add flour, just go little bit by little bit. And just take your time. Now when I pull up the bread in my bag, it's not sticking so much to the side. See how it's starting to pull away a little bit? That's a good clue or an indication that it's time to start taking this out and really working it right here on our board. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is, this is how you knead. You pull it back and you smush it. Pull it back and you want to twist it a little bit. As you can see, this is getting pretty sticky. I need to add a little bit more flour here so that it won't stick to my board. And you want the dough to be nice and elastic. So good rule of thumb for me when I make this recipe is I want to try to knead it. That means pulling it, folding it, smushing it, and turning it. That's one knead. If you do that about 100 to 150 times, depending on your dough and depending on what the weather's like outside, how much humidity is in the air, that is about enough times to where you want your dough to be, and that will make it nice and elastic. And what this will look like when it's done is it will look just like this right here. As you can see, it's nice and smooth. It's really light, and when you press down, it will bounce back. This is kind of starting the rising process, so it's not bouncing back quite as strongly as it would as if I had just finished kneading it. But there you are. So you'll keep kneading it just like this, like I said, about 100 to 150 times. And then you'll have your dough just like this. Now if you pull it on the side and it starts to rip and tear, that means it's not quite elastic enough. You want to keep working and see how the flour has already been absorbed. You need to add a little bit more. And just like I said, just little bit by little bit. Perfect. Then once your dough is ready, you're going to let it rise. If you wanted to make a bread loaf, you would just kind of smush this out into an oval shape, put that in an oiled bread pan, and let it rise for about an hour. Since for us, we want to make these cute little bunny rolls over here, what we need to do is we need to cut this into little pieces. So here's a couple of tricks. It's tough to know exactly how many sizes of equal shape you're going to get out of a piece of dough. So I know that you guys are working on fractions right now, so we're just going to cut it in half. Then I'm going to cut this piece in half and this piece in half. And I'm going to roll them out kind of like snakes. There's one snake. There's two snakes. And you want them about the same size if you can get about the same length and width. Great. Then also, again, since we're using fractions, we're going to cut this one in half and in half again. That's about the size, and then you're going to roll it into a ball. That's about the size that you want for a roll. So we're just going to keep each of these in half and then in half again. In half and then in half again. In half and then half again. You're just going to roll them into a little ball like that for the rolls, and then you're going to let them rise. Now, when they're finished rising, they're going to look like this right over here. These I did this morning, and they've been sitting for a few hours, and see how they're nice and puffy like that? You'll know when they're done rising because it will double in size. This can take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. If you want to learn how to make the bunnies, what you're going to do is just take one like this and give it a couple of little ears. So just a little snip there, a little snip there. If you want, you can give them maybe a little bunny tail. And then I'm using a skewer to give them a little eyes. And then what you'll do is throw this in the oven for 350 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes. And then when they are done, they'll look like this. These are our finished bunny rolls. And that's it. And thank you so much for joining us. And remember, it's never too late to create better health.